Okay, so now you're going to do the same thing for Edward Bach, just in a dupe. Okay, you're just done choosing your theme defining synonyms. You pick no search engine improvement synonyms on that list that pulls down to the beginning. It's going to be exactly identical. Okay, and you're going to view all themes for this cluster. Okay, view all clusters. What you've got is you've got a Floralive Phase 1 for Edward Bach and a Floralive Phase 2. You're actually going to have a Phase 3 and a Phase 4. And the Phase 4 will be strictly your pre-blueprint cluster. You're only going to be drawing in your blueprint from your Phase 4. And the reason you segregate all these out is to have the various phases to reveal to your client. It breaks it down enough that gives you a diverse enough breakdown of all the things that you need to approach, which is a lot of stuff, guys. For a client, you can go back and grab any graph from any one of those phases. It'll make sense to you. For example, in the Edward Bach phase here, phase 2 is completely appropriate. In fact, phase 2 is designed to do the drill down. So what you do is you take Edward Bach and go ahead and drill that theme. Now, as you guys know, probably from the VOMA, you're going to have all kinds of connections and keywords come back, and that's going to render an entire different graph. If you haven't already snagged that graph when you were playing around in VOMA, which a lot of the times people get excited and they start drilling into a lot of stuff in VOMA, and you mess up the graph that's isolated just to Edward Bach and the cluster around Edward Bach. Yeah, so you want to have a lot of free license in the VOMA. So Edward Bach phase 2 is Edward Bach plus the most interesting keywords, co-occurrences, and visual interface for your client. And that means you'll always have that to come back to at any phase, beginning, during, and after. Even when the blueprint and the site's up, you'll be able to come back and remind yourself, what that looked like. Okay, and we've drilled into Edward Bach. Usually you have a very similar configuration, and sometimes you have a slightly different one depending upon what data center it was pulled from. And you got 10 million total search market value in this one. Let's go back and look in the other one. Hang on a second. Yeah, I just jumped back to the VOMA for Edward Bach, and we never even drilled into it. Okay, it's kind of hit or miss back in the VOMA. So let's go back into part 2. And notice that you have a completely different graph. Here's phase 2 Floralive for Edward Bach. Okay, go back to view all clusters. It's got a whole bunch of different competing things. And phase 1 is only going to be isolated to that. So the cross-theme domain cluster market share is going to be quite different in phase 1 because it's only the competing websites for this, for Edward Bach, just the term by itself. But when you go back to, when you do phase 2, you're going to have a cluster that's relevant to these 25 terms. Okay. Furthermore, now that you've got the 25 terms laid out, you can show your client a lot more things. You're not going to bother to show all keywords and starting deleting and omitting and get rid of stuff at this phase. It's way too early, guys. You don't want to do that in the 3rd and the 4th phase. But you can do the rank domains data for the client, because now you're dealing with something completely different. Keep in mind what you're going to see on this particular thing is the organic market domain market share for the 24 interesting keywords on the previous screen. Okay, so you don't really want to sort and mix and match at this point. If you're going to mix and match the keywords on the 24 and delete these 24 interesting ones on the previous screen, you're going to do that probably in phase 3. Okay, but you can always do a rank a new domain. Let's see if Floralive is ranked for any of those terms. And the percent of potential unrealized potential is 100%. That just means that Floralive is not ranked for any of these particular terms. These are the 24 terms that Krakken has deemed to be interesting. Back here on the theme, just click Return to Theme to remind yourself what that is. You can go here and look at everything. If you are really big on showing people only terms that you're interested in, you can go ahead and start deleting these terms if you like on this screen. I have no problem with that. Just keep in mind that every time you delete one here, a keyword is going to be, that's going to pop up. Okay, here's show all keywords. Instead of just the 24, when you show all keywords, you're going to show all 100 or so. Sometimes it's more than that. Every time you delete one of the interesting ones, Krakken will attempt to grab the most interesting next one that didn't make the cut below the waterline. Sue does not recommend that you mix and match and start deleting at this point. If you're going to delete, my suggestion is expand the whole list, clicking this button, and delete them all at once rather than come back, otherwise you'll be frustrated. This graph dazzles clients. In a moment, we'll get into it more.